Hello, you beautiful persons. I just want to tell you all this book. Yes, this one right here is pretty cool. Okay, wait, no. Sorry, I kind of lied to you. This book is actually amazing. Now, you probably read this book because you just don't walk into a store and see a book with the same and say, hey, I want that. But wanna know who did? Me. And now I'm here to convince you, yes, you, to get this book. If you couldn't tell already, this book is called The Loneliest Girl in the Universe, and it's written by this pretty cool author named Lorianne James. The genre is romance, science fiction, and young adult fiction. And if you're not yet interested, then...
Oh, what's wrong with you?
If you're not yet interested, then that's fair. That's why I'm here to convince you into being interested into this novel. And I'm going to read the author's backstory on the book, which is really the best summary I can give on the book without spoiling it.
The daughter of two astronauts, Rami Silvers, is no stranger to life in space, but she never could have known how isolating the universe could be until her parents' tragic death left her alone in the infinity, spatial which is speeding away from Earth. Rami tries to make the best of her situation, but with only brief messages from her therapist on Earth to keep her company, she can't help but feel like something is missing. Seems like her dream come true when NASA looks to that another trip, but the Eternity will be joining the Infinity. Ryan begins exchanging messages to Jay, the commander of the Eternity, and her friendship with Jay brings life into her world. But as the Eternity gets closer, Rami learns that there's more to Jay's mission than she could have ever imagined, and suddenly, there are worse things than being alone.
It's actually kind of surprising how much information this gives us about the main character before even starting the book. We know that Rami has mental issues for being stuck on a ship trillions of miles away from civilization. Not only that, but she must have also witnessed an event that happened to her parents, which caused her to escape her mental issues such as PTSD. But also infer that she must be really smart to be able to maintain a ship in the middle of space by herself. The each person mission also seems like a good character to add since it gives a protagonist something to look forward to, which could also be helpful to the story. Mentioning that there is something up with Jay is also very good to catch the reader's attention. It would ruin the surprise though for someone not knowing about what was up with Jay in the first place and finding out in the book, but yeah, I guess it still works. Overall, I rate the backstory 4 apples out of 5. Let's go for some common questions that people normally have about a book. The main protagonist, as you probably could have already guessed, is Rami Silvers. The book is told in a first-person point of view, which means we're able to experience how Rami feels in this isolated environment and how she reacts to major events throughout the story. This book is a character feel very well thought out and allows the reader to have a deeper connection. The prominent antagonist throughout the book is a nation called the UPR. They're basically a version of the Soviet Union that didn't fail, so they conquered the Earth and disbanded every nation. They give Rami an upgrade to her ship, and ever since then, shocking events have been occurring, making her life a living heck. The setting, as told in the backstory, take place in space. On a ship called the Infinity. The settings change very often since the ship is equipped with many rooms. This leads to some interesting situations, to say the very least. The time period the story takes place in the distant future of 2060. This is to provide some new technological changes, such as a scientist figuring out how to go a fraction of the speed of light, digital machines that automatically fix and clean your teeth without you lifting a finger, and cryogenic chambers that allow people to stay in a deep sleep for years without aging. The main theme of the book, I would say, is isolation and trauma. Many times are these two subjects brought up throughout the book. The isolation and emptiness of space became very apparent whenever you see Rami suffer. The trauma she also has to face seems like it would be unbearable for most people. Of course, there are some other questions I may have thought of, but those are the main ones that pop up whenever someone asks about a book. Now, one of the things that a lot of books do incorrectly is form some sort of connection with the reader. Some books are just like, hey, look at this character, he is a good guy that does good things, and nobody else is capable of doing those things. No. I mean by this is not normally feel forced. Of course, not every book does this. Some books are forming willing connections instead of forceful connections. One of those books is The Loneliest Girl in the Universe. As I mentioned earlier, this is in first person, meaning you're able to see what the narrator is thinking, so this forms a relational connection with the reader, since you're able to see what's going through the protagonist's head. You're able to see their struggles, fears, hardships, etc. This makes the book so much more enjoyable because whenever an event happens, you can actually feel what the protagonist is going through. All that being said, I can say this book is really well done and was a blast to read. I'd recommend it to anybody who was into romances or science fiction for sure. Even if you're not, you still might enjoy reading this. Of course, there are some parts of the book that could have been handled better, like the pacing for example. Some things don't make sense, but most of them are just nitpicks. Now I do warn that in the middle of the book, there are some stuff that you might not want younger children to read. Bear in mind, I've never actually done anything like this, so sorry if it seems really poorly done. And with that said, I rate this book 8 pineapples out of 10. Don't ask why I'm an apple.